It's a huge part of the ground game. The fact that people don't have the ability to do that in UFC 5 after taking 3 years to develop the game, it just upsets me, man. Yo, what up? It's DJ here, and we're going to be talking about one of the features in UFC 5 that I'm very upset we're not going to have. Of course, what we played in the beta it's not the final product, right? You can't make it an opinion on that because it's not the final product. So maybe they will put hammer fists and elbows in the game, but that is the topic of today's discussion. They don't have hammer fists and they don't have elbows in today's UFC 5. Now, there is a lot of talk about why that is. Now, the reason you're seeing this screen is because Z Hunter, also known as Zach in the community, he is the owner of ESFL, which is the esports gaming league for both Undisputed and UFC. And as you see here, he was responding to a comment made by Combat Esports Media, where they said you will only be allowed to throw one ground elbow in UFC 5 before going back down into guard. Now, Z Hunter decides to respond to that and say, not sure why this is upsetting. In most scenarios, this is pretty realistic. A powerful elbow while postured up requires you to break your posture while throwing the elbow. Most fighters don't posture up repeatedly with elbows instantaneously unless they are close to the TKO. I need to make it a point here to say that there's no possible way that you could know that you are close to a TKO unless you're repeatedly landing strikes, in which case, why can't you land multiple elbows? Why wouldn't somebody throw multiple elbows if they're able to unload multiple strikes? That's the only way you could know you're close to a TKO. And what he's doing here is using game metrics to speak on real life. My good friend, the boy Dave, go subscribe to him. I'll put his channel in the description below. He decided to bring this up and he made a good point, and he said that most of the people that are in this realm of game changers, they start to use game talk, game metrics in real life conversations. Being close to a TKO in his terms would mean low health, low head health, low body health, low health in general. That would be close to a TKO. But in real life, there is no close to TKO. You're not close to a TKO. The only close to a TKO you could be, again, is if you're landing multiple unanswered strikes, which I'm gonna say, at that point, why wouldn't you throw multiple elbows? Which is why I decided to respond with this meme right here. I wasn't expecting a response from Z Hunter, obviously. I was just throwing that out there. To which he then replies, "You find this more realistic?" And it is a video of UFC 2, I'm assuming, or 3, where Khabib is repeatedly spamming elbows on Nate Diaz's body and head unanswered. Let me make this clear. In no way am I saying UFC 3 or 2 or whichever game that is. I'm not sure. I didn't really look at it in depth. I am in no way saying that that game's ground and pound system is realistic, or even from that position or the way he's throwing the elbows. I'm in no way saying any of that is realistic. What I'm saying is, it is more realistic for somebody to throw an elbow while striking multiple times. In terms of throwing hooks and straights and other ground and pound strikes to try and hit somebody, including hammer fists, it's more realistic for them to throw an elbow in there either once or multiple times in the midst of striking, rather than they just hit one elbow and stop striking. In the UFC 5 beta, when you were swinging at somebody and you wanted to do an elbow, no matter how many strikes you had landed, no matter how hurt the person was, or no matter what position you were in, if you threw an elbow at any point during your ground and pound combination sequence, you were going to throw that elbow and that was going to be the end. It was going to break your posture. Whereas in real life, throwing an elbow doesn't just put you back in somebody's guard. It doesn't break your posture. You can throw multiple elbows. And I find it funny that he says that throwing an elbow is going to break your posture when you can throw a straight and miss it multiple times, and that doesn't break your posture. It just pulls you back up into a position. You just throw it and you come back up to sitting here like you're just playing rock'em sock'em or something. I find that to be funny that you can do that. You can throw a punch straight at somebody's head, miss it, and come back up. But you can't throw multiple elbows and come back up. What's the difference there? So I then responded, and I can't full screen these videos. I actually gotta kind of blur them out a little bit, but you should be able to tell what the videos are. The first video is Curtis Blades landing his elbows against Alistair Overeem, and the second video is Yoel Romero landing his elbows against Lyoto Machida from half guard. And I said, I find this to be realistic. This shouldn't be that hard of a mechanic to add to the game, especially considered there are multiple ground positions in which top and bottom fighters can spam elbows, not just postured up, of course, because that's, quote, unrealistic. And that is true from both top and bottom in UFC 4. You can spam elbows. whether it be full guard, bottom full guard, side control, crucifix. There are multiple positions in which you can spam elbows from both sides. That includes rubber guard too, that includes side saddle. There's a lot of positions in which you can spam elbows in the game, but in real life, they just, apparently that's just too unrealistic. You can't spam elbows in real life. Spam elbows in real life. He responds, both of these came as finishes. Note that I mentioned that in my initial comment. The animation for multiple elbows exists in game once you trigger the TKO animation. If your last strike thrown before the TKO was an elbow. In his initial comment, he states that the elbow is used when you're close to a TKO, which again doesn't make sense. But even then, most of these elbows are finishes, correct? But as you can see in these clips, there are 5 elbows total thrown in this clip. So let's use his example and say that an elbow thrown knocks you out, and then you follow up with 3 unanswered elbows. That is only 4 elbows, which means that in these 2 clips where 5 elbows are both thrown, in both, it is 5 total elbows being thrown. That means that at minimum, you should be able to throw 2 elbows, not just 1, before a TKO animation triggers or you get your posture broken. It shouldn't just be 1 elbow. He then drops this screenshot where he's decided to circle. Most fighters don't posture up repeatedly with elbows instantaneously unless they are close to a TKO. So I then responded, you would have absolutely no way of knowing that you're close to a TKO in real life unless you're landing multiple unanswered strikes, which is a point being made. 2. Curtis needed 2 elbows to knock Overeem out. The rest were follow-up. Yoel needed 3. He responds, what you're saying here is in the game. Once you diminish their head health, if your last strike was an elbow, the TKO animation triggers, which has your fighter throwing 3 unanswered elbows in a row. As I've already said, that is not 5 total elbows, that is 4. And I know that's a little nitpicky that it's only 4 instead of 5. Point being that they have multiple elbows in the game from a postured up position, and I have to trigger an animation for me to do that. Why? If the animation is already in the game for you to land multiple elbows from different various positions throughout the ground game, I should be able to do that not postured and postured up. He also says I wouldn't call those postured elbows either. Curtis was holding the can opener. A mechanic for something like that would be cool, but let's not pretend he was completely postured up in guard, raining down elbows on repeat. So then I provide this clip of Jon Jones battering his opponent with multiple elbows while being postured up in full mount. Again, you can say he's not fully postured up, but in my opinion, why don't they add an animation where somebody lowers themselves to land an elbow and comes back up? If you can miss a strike that breaks your posture in UFC 4 and posture right back up without having to do an animation. I then responded with these 3 videos, including the Jon Jones video, saying the multiple elbows are used to finish, not done after the finish. In these 3 videos, you can clearly see more than 5 elbows landing before somebody is put to sleep. I can't show these videos, so I'm going to link these in the description of my video or probably somewhere in the comments for you guys to go look at them. But in these videos separately, there is an average of 7 elbows. Now there's more than 7, but there is an average of 7 elbows thrown in each video. That is 3 more elbows than the max elbow count you can possibly have inside of UFC 4. I also said I will delete my account if you show me any clip I provided where they threw 1 elbow, the fighter turned over or gave up, and they got 3 more unanswered. In every single clip, they landed multiple elbows before the fighter was out. He says 2, 3, 4, 5. The finish is the same. The reality is that fighters far more often throw postured elbows as a singular strike, and I think that the things that happen more often in MMA should be prioritized as mechanics in game. That was the sentiment of my original post. No, that's where I got you. See, you said that being postured up and throwing an elbow doesn't happen because it's unrealistic. 1. And 2, if it's unrealistic, then it shouldn't happen at all. And if it is realistic, then it should be able to be done multiple times, as I've provided evidence of happening. Also, he stated the sentiment of his original post was that things that happen more often in MMA should be prioritized as mechanics in game. But if we use the picture he provided us right here, not sure why this is upsetting. In most scenarios, this is pretty realistic. A powerful elbow while postured up requires you to break your posture while throwing an elbow. Most fighters don't posture up repeatedly with elbows instantaneously unless they are close to the TKO. I can go back again and show you 3 fighters who were fighting somebody who was not close to being TKO'd, because I don't even know what that means. They were sitting here in a half guard or full mount position, throwing multiple elbows. Not 3, not 4, 7 at minimum. Not 3, not 4. They were raining down elbows while also being postured up, which he claimed wasn't a thing and unrealistic. Now he's claiming that the usual is what should be prioritized and not the unusual, which I agree with. It's completely true. The usual should be prioritized over the unusual. But in UFC 4 and the UFC 5 beta, there were fighters that had animations that they don't usually do. Animations that they did one time in a fight and it more than likely didn't even land, yet they're still given the animation for doing it. In that case, if you are going to allow fighters to do things usually that they don't usually do, for instance, Justin Gaethje's rolling thunder or a litany of other things, flying knees, etc., etc. If you're gonna allow them to have those animations for things that they don't usually do, then you should have multiple elbow animations. Even though those aren't usual, there should be a choice for me to do it if it's how I choose to attack somebody. There are multiple fighters who choose elbows as ground and pound tactics. Tony Ferguson, Charles Oliveira, Khabib, John Jones, all use elbows to cut somebody open. And now in a game like UFC 5, where cuts matter and cuts can get a doctor stoppage and affect how you play the game, having ground elbows is a huge thing. And if you're not able to defend them, why wouldn't I throw them? On top of that, it's not like you can't just add in a mechanic to block them. It would be the same mechanic for blocking other strikes. Blocking elbows is how you're supposed to defend them anyway. I don't understand the argument against adding multiple elbows. What damage does it do to a ground and pound system to have elbows in the game? Not only that, but hammer fists should also be in the game. I don't understand why they're not. I'll provide more clips too that have people throwing hammer fists and elbows. It's a huge part of the ground game. The fact that people don't have the ability to do that in UFC 5 after taking 3 years to develop the game, it just upsets me, man. I'm gonna go play some other video games so I can have at least a month of not having to worry about having my block broken or getting spammed with takedowns or any of the cheese. I'm excited for UFC 5's release. Of course, I'm a content creator. I'm gonna love the release of another game that is newer and fresher, even if it is only slightly newer and slightly fresher than the game that I was just playing. But make no mistake about it, I am disappointed with the things that are not put in the game, and I'm going to vocalize those things as much as possible in hopes that the next time around somebody hears it. Thank you guys for watching, man. I've been your boy DJ. Peace.
Rescue me, take me out the club, take me out the trap, take me off the market, take me off the map. I'm tryna hit the group chat and tell them it's a con.